Hi, and welcome to another episode of NCBA's Coffee Break. I'm your host, Nathan Willner, and today, as part of our Getting to Know Your NCBA Leaders series, we have a very special guest, Craig Noack. Craig is a prominent leader within the NCBA and a seasoned attorney in creditors' rights law. Uh, let's welcome Kurt. Welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for taking the time to share a little bit about your background with other members that are listening in. So let's dive right in. Um, can you give us a little bit of a background of where you practice, what kind of law you practice, and then we can kind of get into some of the other details about how you got to become one of NCBA's leaders.
Sure, I've been in creditors' rights law since January of 2002. I really enjoyed Professor Jay Westbrook's uh, class on secured credit. He asked me to help him with his business bankruptcy project, and that got me into bankruptcy. And I spent the first 3.5 years in East Texas practicing creditors' rights and bankruptcy law. And then I moved in-house with a publicly traded debt buyer named Asset Acceptance. And I was there for about 6 years. Then I jumped over to Encore Capital Group, Midland Credit Management. I was in-house counsel for 5 years. The interesting thing about, and then after that, I came back out to Texas and started my own firm in 2017. So about 8 years in private practice after coming out from being in-house. The greatest thing that I learned from being in-house for 11 years is how practices happen across multiple states, how statute limitations are calculated across multiple states, the causes of action, all that kind of stuff. I had the privilege of speaking to attorneys in all 50 states on collections litigations practices, compliance practices, things like that. And it gave me a wonderfully unique view of the uniqueness of collections laws within all 50 states, and the fact that where there's a wide variety, right, from C to C. So and now I practice primarily in receiverships law in Texas, which is a unique judgment remedy in Texas, and we've kind of been at the forefront of it's pretty rare to say this, but innovating in the collection space, right? It's what we do is thousands of years old, but I think here in Texas we're trying something new, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, because I want to hear more about that receivership practice area because it's unique. But before we get there, let's talk about NCBA a little bit and why is serving as an NCBA leader such an important part of your professional life, and how does that affect your law practice?
I mean, I think we're in a smaller world now, right? I think you know things happen on the national level that affect us in our state practices. And what I think has been critically important for me getting involved with NCBA is that, you know, people don't, believe it or not, like there's not a whole lot of people speaking out about the good parts of creditors' rights practice, how it works in the economy, how it's essentially like the sewer system. Nobody wants to talk about it or see it or anything like that, but it's absolutely necessary, absolutely critical, and has to function right, or everything shuts down. And NCBA is one of those, few voices out there that is actually trying to remind regulators, remind Congress, help coordinate amongst the states, help contribute to whether it's amicus briefs, whatever, is trying to kind of keep that voice alive because that's critical for my practice in Texas. It's critical for everybody's practice. It's just whether or not you wake up to the fact that you really need to get involved and help add your voice to that voice, to help protect what we do, because we are doing it the way it needs to be done, and the world needs to know that.
Absolutely, I'm always surprised when I hear questions or maybe insinuations that somehow people that practice this area of law are any different than any other area. Yeah, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. The standards applied to this practice area are infinitely more robust than any other area. It's not the other way around. So let's talk about, um, what's talk about your practice a little bit. How many attorneys do you have? Where do you practice? And again, you mentioned receivership, which is unique. And let me just, for the context, many times people think NCBA caters to either larger firms or firms that just do credit card debt collection, and that's not true at all, is it?
Well, no, I mean, I joined as a small firm. I mean, look, when I came out in 2016, it was me, my wife and law partner, and one 1099 employee of counsel, right? And that's it. And now we're at about 35 employees. We've got three attorneys. It used to be six attorneys, but I just split my practice off into the receivership practice and the litigation practice. But I have always been a small firm compared to some of these bigger folks, and I honestly have not felt um, anything but welcomed, right, within NCBA, especially in things like the executive experience, where you can be a small firm owner, you can sit down next to our president Michael Stillman, or a partner with a 12 state practice, and talk about the same. It's the same stuff, it's just either writ large or writ small. And you can get a lot of, I think there's a great exchange of ideas where the small firms do things a certain way, the big firms do things a certain way. And there are positives and negatives for both, right? I think as a small firm, maybe we're a little bit more nimble, a little bit more able to, because we're smaller, we cater to only a fewer clients, which means we can give them more bespoke service. Of course, large firms have a lot of economies of scale, things like that. And as I've grown, I found that my use of NCBA has grown, right? So when I was a small firm, hey, the NCBA's got a vendor certification program. Great. I use that several times to give that certificate to my client saying, the vendors that I use are good, right? So my process server, my back office support, my e-filer, they've all gone through it. They're good. As I've grown, right, it's really NCBA helps connect you to the developments in the broader community that you need to care about, right? Talking to peers and finding out that this is what some clients are now moving to in terms of audit requirements or what have you, and that's been invaluable, right, as you continue to grow. Um, so yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I started out as a small law firm. I think when I started, I may have had like 10 employees or something like that, maybe a little bit less. And yeah, it's just it provided benefits for me as a small firm, and it continues to provide benefits.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, and I hopefully you'll agree that some of the growth, or even most of the growth, it came as a result of you being part of the larger creditors' rights, industry, or the larger, different areas of law.
I can't even tell you how many times recommendations from NCBA folks have helped me out, right? So just being around, having talked to folks, and it can be as simple as somebody saying, "Oh, I was just talking to Craig last week. He's in Texas. Why don't you give him a call?" I can't tell you how many times that I've heard that. People have reached out to me saying, "Hey, folks at NCBA have said that you do this kind of work. Can you help us out?" It's been invaluable. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also, I've gotten closer with you over the years because of NCBA and getting to know the kind of work you do, but also it gives you a platform, whether you participate in speaking on a webinar or something at a conference. It definitely gives you the platform that to for people to get to know you out, far away from the state of Texas. I mean, there are other places besides Texas, though. Maybe some folks don't know that in Texas.
Yeah, right. Sure. And I'd also say that it helps with professional development. Like I started going to NCBA back when it was NARCA, and I was a regional managing attorney at Asset Acceptance, right? And so I started going back then, and I was a small cog in a much bigger wheel. But you go to the meetings and you go to the conferences and you learn and you meet people, and the next conference you know a few more people, next conference you know a few more people, and next thing you know, that's helping, so that when I did move jobs, right, it was like, okay, well, are you involved in the national organizations? Yes, I am. And I think that helped me stand out from others and help me kind of rise within the organization. A lot of times, um, I used to, especially when I worked in house, I would mentor young attorneys. And a lot of those attorneys were kind of frustrated. What, how can I move forward in this industry when it's so regulated, as you alluded to earlier, right? It's hard to start a collections law practice. It really, really is. But you can also rise within your organization, and you can rise by adding to your resume, by engaging on the national issues, even when you don't necessarily have that responsibility right up front. But trust me, the fact that you're there, that you're listening, that you know what they're talking about, eventually gets noticed, right? And in my case, I mean, that definitely helped me demonstrate to when I was in house, that I was aware of the issues, that I understood the issues, that you could trust me to think about the issues, and being a part of NCBA and other national organizations, that's absolutely critical to growth, your
Yeah.
personal growth.
Yeah. And I really think that folks that, consider themselves part of the creditors' rights legal profession and are not a member of any of these organizations and NCBA, I think they're at a disadvantage over their competition, quite frankly. But let's talk about, since practicing law, or it could be any time in your life, um, could you share what would you consider the best advice anyone ever gave you?
I had to think about this one. I would say it was probably my dad, and he used to say this repeatedly when I was growing up. And you're hopefully you laugh at it, but I found it really useful. He said, "If you can't be good, be lucky." And I don't, and that doesn't mean you should not try to be good as much as possible, but it does teach you to appreciate it when things go your way, even when maybe you think it might not have gone your way. So much of what we do, you're constantly scraping away at something, right? And it takes forever, takes longer than you thought it would, longer than was promised by the vendor or your project manager. And you sometimes you wake up and you go, "Are we ever going to get there?" But then every once in a while things work out, right? Every once in a while the stars line up, and things work in such a way that it helps you out. And you got to stop, you got to savor those moments. You got to recognize that it's a combination of both. You got to
Yeah.
recognize that it's not just the struggle, but it's also the opportunity. And I thank my lucky stars that I definitely have tried to work on things, but I've also had my fair share of luck. And I think you've got to keep working for those opportunities to happen, so that you can take advantage of it.
Yeah, sometimes I think we make our own luck, quite frankly.
That's
But
true as
being in
well.
the right, yeah. So talking about efficiencies, the hot topic now is AI, artificial intelligence. It's the latest craze, so to speak, but it's here to stay, I kind of think. How has that affected your practice at all? Has it had any impact or in your
Yeah,
day
no,
to
in
day?
fact, I'm about to sign a contract to start the years-long process of seeing what AI can do for us. I think you've already got a lot of folks who are using AI for some pretty basic stuff, some stuff that maybe in the past might have been outsourced, right? AI is now helping with some of those things. But I think it has revolutionary potential in our industry. Um, in some unexpected ways. The example that I would give you is, and again, my practice is fairly unique as a court appointed receiver. I have authority to get information from post judgment consumers about their financial situation, so that I can work out a method with them to resolve the judgment with the creditor. And so that means that I can get information, their financial information. I actually insist on their financial information directly from them, translating the information that we have at our fingertips into the best decisions for your client, or for, in my case, the case itself, right? AI can radically transform that. So one of the things that we're engaging with right now, and it's very preliminary, but it's not just, how do we just implement AI to help with chat, right? Okay, that's one thing it can help. But how do we know what information to collect for AI, so that AI can have a base level of learning so that it can start to give you benefits, right? So if I know, 5 or 6 key information points about a debtor, how much they make, how much, what their expenses are, what emergencies, how often they're paid, all that kind of stuff. What AI is promising, and what we're spending lots of money right now to explore, is can it tease out information that's going to be beneficial to the creditor as well as to the defendant, right? The example that I'd give you is, kind of traditional collection agencies. Their desire is to collect as much money as fast as possible, right? When lawyers settle cases, they're much more willing to listen and say, okay, well, tell me what the situation is. I agree that I don't think you can afford that level of payment plan. How about this payment plan? Let me see if I can get my client to approve that sort of thing, right? But if I do a garnishment of some kind or whatever, and it's a question between taking $500 from the judgment debtor's account right now, and leaving the remaining of the judgment unsatisfied, or putting them on a payment plan at $100 a month, uh, are they more or less likely to default? Is the creditor more likely to get more money out of the payment plan or out of the lump sum? Right? AI can help tell us that. AI can also help the consumer by telling us, don't agree to that payment plan. They're just promising that because that's what you want to hear. It's not what they can afford, right? So if you try to force somebody making $50,000 a year to pay $1,000 a month, well, most of the time they're not going to be able to do that, even though they're promising it to you. AI can help tell you that and say that their potential to break that payment plan is X%. So maybe don't do that. Maybe you should agree to accept less, right, than what they're offering. It's better for them. It's better for the creditor. It's better for everybody if we come to a realistic resolution of the case that the consumer can live with and the creditor is happy with, right? So I think that's one of those big things that AI can help bring us in the next few years. It's helping us learn to use our data, because we have, as an industry, so much ability to gather data that a lot of other law firms don't even know how to do, right?
Yeah.
Well, we can gather that data, but the intelligent digestion and actioning on that data, that's where AI has real potential within our industry to do more than just eating at the edges and saving some dollars by having AI do something that
Yeah.
formerly somebody else could do. It's that transformative kind of, hey, look, if you want to maximize your recovery, you need to make something that's good for both parties. And
Yeah.
so AI can
What
tell
I
us that.
find what I find so interesting and really actually, encouraging is that we're looking for ways to make it the process better for both consumers and creditors. Because what I picked up from what you were saying, which I found, really something that I would love, the general audience and the greater audience out there to hear, is that we are looking for ways to make the process better for consumers. It's not just for I mean, obviously, your obligation is to the client and to zealously represent them to the best of your ability. But part of that is to make sure that, any interaction with the consumer, it benefits the consumer as well, because no agreement, we have plenty of pieces. I always say we have plenty of pieces of paper that says Mr. Smith owes ABC company money. I don't want any more pieces of paper that say you owe
Right.
them money. It's such a misconception. People say, oh, they all they want is default judgments. We don't need any more pieces of paper that says you owe them money. We really want to figure out a way that it's a payment arrangement or something that it works for both parties. Because, like you said, a payment arrangement that defaults after literally before the ink is dry, that's not an arrangement that's helping anybody, right? It's just
Yeah.
more work for everybody.
Yeah, the client's not going to reward you for 10,000 default judgments. They're going to reward you for creating workable deals with the consumer. I think one of the things that AI can help deliver to us is kind of what other countries do. Like, essentially what I do as a receiver is I kind of broker payment plans that work for both sides. It's very similar to kind of semi-performing debt in the UK, things like that, where in return for more knowledge, the creditor accepts some limitations on what they can do. So I think that there's all sorts of opportunities like that. You know, it, at the end of the day, I think consumer advocacy groups would want to say, can we create a world where we're fashioning common sense resolutions. Uh, and that's, I think, one of the things that AI can help bring to us, and that we need to be focused on as collection attorneys as well.
Yeah, no, very exciting stuff. And we're gonna see how the stall thing unwinds. And I have a feeling it's just my imagination has not caught up with yet what it could do. I mean, because every time I'm like, oh my God, what? So
Mhm.
anyway, we're getting close to the end of our cup of coffee, so to speak. And so what advice would you give to a third year law student today based on everything that you know?
I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is don't worry if you don't like law school, because the practice of law is different. And there's that saying about if you hate law school, you'll love practicing. If you love law school, you'll hate practicing. I don't know if that's true, but I will say that in my particular instance, I was, as a third year law student, I was going, I don't know if I want to do this. And I loved law school, but I think that practice of law is just fundamentally different. So just recognize that yes, you're learning, you're getting the tools, but it's not the same, and it won't be the same. I think the other thing that I would say to a third year law student is don't think you know what line of practice you want to go into. You haven't seen it yet. And so, I think I came out thinking, oh, I like bankruptcy. I'm going to do bankruptcy work. And I did like bankruptcy work, but I liked it on the creditor side a lot more than I liked it on the debtor side. And then I got into kind of replevin, and I liked that. I liked interacting with various courts. Um, I like going to court and winning, which meant that being in a creditors' rights firm was a great idea because usually the money's owed. But I think I would just tell the law student to keep an open mind about what they want to do and focus on gaining the skills you need in the first few years that will help you regardless of where you decide to go.
Yeah,
So take take a job if it gives you in-court experience the first year, even if it doesn't pay as much.
great advice.
Um,
Great
yeah,
advice. Absolutely great advice. So just want to thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights, giving our members a little bit of a background on where you came from and why you're here, and all the great work that you're helping NCBA with. I know that we appreciate everything that you do for us and for the organization. So, with that, I want to just thank our listeners for tuning in to NCBA's coffee break today and getting to know your NCBA leader. And everyone should stay tuned. We'll see this recording and in one of our newsletters. And thank you again, Craig. And hopefully you'll come back and we'll talk some more about some of these details because got a lot to
sounds
talk
great.
about.
Thanks, Nathan, and thanks for all you do for NCBA.
All right. Thank you.